Hi, everyone, and welcome to There's No Such Thing as Normal, a podcast about neurodiversity, disability, and mental health. I'm Lou, your host, and I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm also completely blind. So, in today's episode, I thought I would talk about septo optic dysplasia, which is my eye condition and it's the cause of my blindness. And yes, it's a mouthful. So I'm going to refer to it as SOD because if I try and say septo optic dysplasia 100 times, I think I will end up in a right old tongue tie and it'll take ages. So SOD for short. So I'll talk about what it is and then how it affects me personally. So SOD is a complex condition that affects the development of certain parts of the brain and the optic nerves. So it's present from birth. So you're born with this condition, and it's sort of happens in the womb, where these certain areas don't develop quite right. There are 3 elements of SOD, and you have to have at least 2 out of the 3 to get a diagnosis. So the first part is called optic nerve hyperplasia. So what this means is that your optic nerves didn't develop properly. So the optic nerves are very tiny nerves right at the back of the eye, and they basically connect the eye and the brain. So they're like an aerial that sends all the visual information that you see. So it's almost like the eye is fine, the eyes are working, but there's no signal. So it's like, when your telly says no connection or you've not got an aerial, it's basically like that. I haven't got, there's no aerial, there's no signal. Basically, that's how it goes. There's normally millions and millions of these fibers in the optic nerves, and they sort of transfer all the information. But in ONH, those fibers are, much less than what they should be. So it can affect one or both eyes. Some people, it might only affect one eye. Other people, it might be both. It can range from complete blindness to actually having quite a lot of useful vision. It's a very individual thing. The second part is midline brain abnormalities. So there are 2 structures that make up the middle part of the brain. There's probably more, who knows? The brain is a rather endless thing, but in this particular condition, it affects two parts, and they are the septum pellucidum and the corpus callosum. The septum pellucidum is a wall that separates the left and right hemispheres, because normally you've got the 2 sides of the brain, and then the septum pellucidum goes down the center. It's just like almost like a divide line, like a division that sort of keeps the 2 halves separated. And the corpus callosum, that is basically a load of nerve fibers and goodness knows what that connect the 2 halves. I think the corpus callosum sort of towards the bottom that sort of holds it all together basically. So if you've got one or both of these structures missing, it sort of affects the structure of your brain. On an MRI scan, your brain would look structurally different because those 2 halves are either going to be connected as one whole thing, or in the case of the the corpus callosum, they might end up being sort of more separate. But they can see that on an MRI scan. And the third part is pituitary gland abnormalities. So the pituitary gland is a gland that's based sort of in the brain, at the very base of the brain, and it controls loads of important hormones. I think things like growth hormone or cortisol, and lots of different hormones. So some people, their pituitary glands don't produce the right level of hormone, which means they have to have hormone replacements and lots of checks to make sure that they are producing the right hormones, and they might need growth hormone replacements and all sorts of things. So there's these 3 components, and yes, it's quite complicated, and everyone is very different, but that is the basis of SOD. So now how it affects me. So when I was a baby, it was quite obvious to people that I wasn't really, I wasn't seeing things. I wasn't looking around. I wasn't sort of, when babies are sort of focusing on toys and things, that just wasn't happening. So it became clear quite early on that there was something going on with my vision. So then, of course, it was a very long process of, well, what's going on here? And lots of hospital visits and lots of tests and scans and goodness knows what, and lots of trips to hospital. And it did take them a while. I think at first my mum and the doctors, they were all kind of just hoping, it could just be something really straightforward that could be, easily fixed or something that I think, people always especially parents, they always want to think, oh, it's not going to be anything major. It'll just be something small. You always hope. But yeah, I eventually got the diagnosis initially of optic nerve hyperplasia. So that is basically, as I said, it's one of the parts of SOD, but you can actually have ONH on its own. But then following an MRI scan, they found that my septum pellucidum was missing. So then my diagnosis was changed to septo optic dysplasia because I have two features. I don't have the pituitary gland abnormalities. So I have the ONH, I have no vision at all, both eyes, completely blind. In my right eye, I have a tiny bit of light perception, but it's not really, it's only really useful for telling the difference between light and dark, which of course is very useful because that helps with your sleep and all those sorts of things. But I can only see a tiny bit of light. I can't see anything else, no sort of colours or shapes or anything. So I've got no vision, and I've got the absent septum pellucidum. I might just add, I actually don't, the septum pellucidum doesn't actually have an important role in the brain. It doesn't really do anything in particular. It's more just like a structural thing. I don't even think they know what it does. I think the brain is still quite a mystery. There is a high prevalence of neurodiversity, neurodivergent conditions amongst people with SOD. So I don't necessarily know if that's to do with the brain being affected or just that, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think that, it's not like, I'm not saying the septum pellucidum having that missing will cause neurodiversity. I don't think it does. I don't know. It's all just so complicated. I don't know, but it doesn't have an important role. It's not like a massively important. It's more just, what puts the brain together. So yeah, of course, that was really, really, really difficult for my mum to deal with. I think I was about 9 months old, so I was only a baby, and it was really hard for my mum to then find out that I was blind and that I would never be able to see. I think that's hard for anybody. But it's one of those things that I've never seen anything, so I'm not really missing out on anything. I know that there are lots of amazing things to see, but I've not seen them. So it's like I can't really miss something I've never had. And don't get me wrong, I get curious about what the world looks like. I do wonder what things look like. But I honestly think that, being blind, I have my own unique way of seeing the world. I see the world through, all my other senses, but in ways that sighted people could never imagine. I feel that, I don't, although being blind is very difficult, don't get me wrong, I just see the world in my own unique way, and I have so much joy in my life, and I get so much joy out of everything that I never sit there and feel sad for being blind, because I don't know any different, and I don't think I ever will necessarily. So it is what it is, really. And there are always other ways of doing things. I imagine that when I was a baby, my mum was probably thinking, oh my goodness, how is Lou going to cope and what am I going to do? But there's so many, especially now with technology, there's so many things that can help if you're blind. And I have so many, really cool ways of doing things. But yeah, it is what it is. And I accept that. And, we make the best of life, don't we? And what we can do and what we can't. And there's always solutions to these things. But it's a bit complicated. I hope it's made sense. I've sort of gone over it in the different parts and how it affects me. But, thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to be putting up lots more episodes. So, keep tuned in for more coming soon. Thanks again. Bye.